Hello, and welcome to another episode of the CIRS Group podcast. I am Barbara.
And I'm JC.
And today we are concluding our CIRSx recap for the moment. You never know. If we think of something else, we might do another. But CIRSx 2025, we are covering the environment related topic. So we're going to do a lot of IEP stuff, testing, building, construction, homes, all that good stuff was covered in these talks. Again, really great talks. IEPs, I don't know what it is, but some of them are the most charismatic, best speakers of the whole CIRS community. I don't know. I don't know what it is about a construction kind of dude or a blue collar kind of guy. And not all men, there's some women too. But like they just tend to be more fun to listen to. I don't know. That's my bias because I do really like this topic as well. But of course, before we get into all of that, you should always consult with your specific IEP, aka indoor environmental professional, for your home remediation needs. But of course, we hope that these recaps of these talks help you think of questions to ask your IEP or things to consider when you are looking for a new home or building a home or cleaning your home or all the things. So let's get into it.
The first remediation talk of the conference was by Brandon Apple. He actually spoke at CIRSx last year, and it was a very similar topic about the sequencing of remediation. And his big points were one, the planning portion of remediation is so important because that's where everyone kind of outlines where their accountability lies. And it also gives the client a timeline and expectations for successful remediation, as well as verification. So that's not just for the client, but for any contractors involved, so everyone is on the same page. And then he mentioned how important it is to have medically minded material choices and techniques. He didn't go into specifics, but I do have to plug John Banta's book. He wrote it with Paula de Laporte, and it is Prescriptions for a Healthy House. And they have very specific recommendations in that book. And then finally, the thing that I learned about in his talk, but then learned more about later at the conference was when you're doing the small particle cleaning, you want a wet wipe, meaning you want to have some sort of surfactant, whether it's UC3. What is the one that smells super strong?
Fantastic.
Fantastic vinegar spray.
Or
Then
dish soap and water is even fine. Yeah.
yeah. And then you want to alcohol wipe the walls and then dry wipe. But later I learned that the alcohol wipe is really just to remove any of the remaining surfactant. So one thing you can do is put blue painter's tape on the wall, and if it sticks, you don't necessarily need to do the alcohol wipe. However, caveat to that, we have heard that alcohol is probably more effective at cleaning endos than vinegar or any of the other surfactants we mentioned. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Good stuff. Yeah. And I really liked his tip about, you kind of you covered this already, but you want the IEP to handle the inspection and determine the goalpost for the whole project, which includes the contractor or mediator, just to make sure everyone has the same expectations. And on that note, you also when you get your bid from the contractor who's going to actually carry out the work that the IEP is telling you need to do, you really want to go line by line on the contractor's bid to make sure they are saying all of the items, all of the actions that need to be taken to remediate your house. It matches up with the IEP's report. So, the contractors they might miss something, and their bid should be detailed enough to really go into detail of all the work they plan to do for your house or office or wherever you're getting things cleaned. So, yeah, and of course, as was the talk last year as well, sequence matters. And I think we don't need to necessarily rehash all of the details of that. If you want to go back and look at last year's CIRSx recap on environment, we covered his talk then and went into more detail of like exactly what sequence to put everything in. And I can link that in the show notes as well.
Next up was Ming Dooley on her Sirewall project. So 2 years ago at CIRSx, she introduced this project. She's building a house, like a little tiny house out of Sirewall, which is hydraulically pressed dirt and rock. Essentially, they test it for integrity, and then you do like your own specific blend for your climate. But she's been building it for the past several years. And so Her big goal with this is to figure out affordable housing that's safe for CIRS patients where they can go to heal. And the reasons why Sirewall might be a particularly great product for this is that it's CIRS safe. It's made out of inorganic materials, so it's unlikely slash impossible to grow mold. It has passive solar, so it's easy to maintain temperature in the structure. And then it's low budget without sacrificing quality. However, in her first presentation, she mentioned a bunch of like equipment she had purchased in order to build the Sirewall. Now you can actually pay Sirewall or other companies to build it for you, so you wouldn't need to invest in that equipment if you weren't like if you didn't want to build it yourself, essentially. So she's at the point now where she's testing the integrity, and if it comes back CIRS safe, she's has 37 acres of land that she's planning on building 9 tiny homes for CIRS patients to recover in on that land. And that was my favorite part of the talk.
Yeah, I love that that seems to be a new-ish focus for some groups or practitioners now is to actually have little tiny homes that are safe for people to recover in because that is just I mean, as I know you and I have seen firsthand with members in the group or personal friends of ours, I mean, you just experienced it. The moving aspect and finding a safe place to live and recover in is just I mean, near impossible for some people. And so I'm really glad that there's been a shift towards that. Of course, that means a lot of things are in the works right now, so they're not available this second. But it's really good to know that in the next few years, we'll have some places, some actual physical places to direct people to that they can heal in if they need.
Yeah, and thank you for addressing the elephant in the room, which is I am sitting on the floor of an empty space. I just moved at the time of this recording 5 days ago, so I don't have furniture yet, but hopefully my desk comes in soon and then I'll be in a more appropriate environment for you guys. But I did want to mention there was a bonus Sirewall conversation. It was kind of a talk that Dr. Scott McMahon squeezed in between his own and then our talk on Saturday. And I'm just kind of doing this out of order because typically we go through the talks in the talk order. So if you're following along from the CIRSx speakers list, you would be able to. But this was a bonus talk that was just kind of shoved in there. But I put it here because it had to do with the Sirewall. So this building is, or sorry, this company is called MAGIS, MAGIS, and they're partnering with Sirewall to build homes essentially. And they're looking at making more of like healing centers, single family units, multifamily units, making it multi-generational. And then they're really into like biophilic design, meaning emulating what we would experience in nature and the home design itself. So curved lines, organic materials, etc. We spoke to them before our talk. They happened to be kind of back where the AV guy was, and they were saying, I can't remember the price points they were saying. Do you remember?
Yeah, they said they were comparing some homes at like $1 million, but their building cost was closer to 2 to 300,000. If I remember correctly, don't quote us on that because I was in peak anxiety because we were literally about to walk on stage and do our talk. But that's what I remember them saying that it was a relatively reasonable what you would expect a home. Well, I shouldn't say that depending on where you live, but that's kind of a median house price point for a lot of people. Now that was, I think, just the construction portion I mean, there's additional, costs involved. Also, you have to own the land and like there's other things going on with that, but it could be an option for some people for sure.
Next up was Greg Weatherman, IEP to the stars. He's actually one of the co-founders of CIRSx, and he had a shorter presentation, but it was called Microbial Growth Where You Least Expect. Very tantalizing. And essentially, he found that certain species of mold can grow on plastics. So they can eat cellulose instead of carbon to exist, which is mildly terrifying because it's like, is nothing safe? It does take longer for molds to degrade petroleum-based plastics, but it happens. And then one interesting tidbit he shared in this talk was when you're getting your outdoor surface samples for your control, if you're testing your home and you're doing an outside sample for a control, he suggested Swiffering stop signs, and we knew that. but he said it's because it's above the boundary layer from the wind.
Hmm,
So potentially you wouldn't want to do anything shorter than a stop sign.
interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, that's all I got on that one. It was so sad at the end of the talk. He was like, I hope I didn't bore you too much. And I just wanted to give him a hug, but he wouldn't. I think you said this last time. He wouldn't like that.
No, I don't think he would. But we love you, Greg. We love all of your knowledge, and we're glad that you can bestow that knowledge upon all of us who don't have the time or know-how really to learn about things like plastic bags can have mold on them. I did also appreciate at the end of the day during the Q&A session that someone asked him, Greg, is there any material that you haven't found mold on? And he just leaned into the mic very clearly and went, no. Like that was it. No explanation. It was a funny moment at the end of the night, but yeah, something to think about, I guess. And also be scared of.
Just fear mongering now.
I know.
The next day, Saturday, opened super strong on the remediation front with Derrick Denis. And I know you just loved this talk so much, so I'm gonna let you take it away.
Of course, I love talks about sewage and sewer gas. No, he was just a very, again, super charismatic ta speaker. I told JC afterwards, like, that's the energy, like confident, no shits given, pun intended, energy on stage, just walking around, just having a good time talking about something he knows so well. And in this case, it was sewer gas. He had a lot of great takeaways. I might just kind of read through some of my notes here on the talk. It certainly said to follow your nose. A lot of times you can smell it, especially when you enter a new place. The smell, your nose will kind of neutralize it over a certain amount of time. So if you're trying to sense it in your own home, that maybe that would be hard. But if you're going into a new place, you're maybe going into the attic or something and you're trying to smell it, you might smell it at that point. But yeah, sewage does smell. Newsflash. I thought this was also interesting. The presence of pests, specifically cockroaches, indicates sewage pipe issue, most likely. They are getting in somehow. And if they are getting in, the sewage smell, gas, I don't soup. It's not a soup. It's a aroma essence that's getting into.
I hate this.
I know. I'll keep going. He also had some really interesting pictures of corroded pipes from sewage gas. It causes hyperoxidation, which basically makes the pipes look black, copper specifically, look black, but it's like a purplish black. I won't go so far as to say it looks pretty, but it's weird. It's a weird look. And so when you see that, you can know probably that you've got a sewage gas leak going on somewhere. So you do want to, obviously replace that pipe because that's now a not safe pipe. It could probably break pretty easily, but also you have an issue to resolve. Did you have anything to add on this one? I would kind of pause to, I want to give you a chance to.
My two biggest takeaways from the talk were one, he said most of the time it's the P trap. So PSA to hydrate your drains. When I moved into this new space, that was the first thing I did. I came in and I just started running water in anything that had a drain. Ran the dishwasher, ran the washing machine, ran all of the things just to make sure all the pipes were hydrated right away. And then the second thing was smoke testing, which I'm sure you're going to get into in more detail, but I know Michael Schrantz brought it up last year as well.
Yeah, so yeah, he covered the smoke test, which is a really, you know, the number one way to test for a sewage gas leak going on in your sewer gas. I don't keep saying sewage gas, that's not correct. Sewer gas leak in your home. They literally pump theater gas or even dry ice evaporatives words through your piping system in your home, and it will look like your home is on fire. So you do want to notify the fire department ahead of time and your neighbors probably to make sure nobody freaks out thinking your house is on fire and calls 911. But you do want to basically have a professional do this, obviously. I hope that's obvious. And then you watch. You look, you use a flashlight, you look at all the pipes, check every single pipe that you can look at the walls. It can be coming through the walls even, which would mean you have a problem in a pipe behind a wall. But yeah, it basically makes any gas escape from the pipes visible. And if you see any of that, under the toilets, like around the rim of the toilet, is a good place to look too. I did like that he said always have two flashlights because one is none and two is I don't even remember the phrase that he used, but it was good. So good that I remembered it. But he did have literally two flashlights on him during the talk, which I thought was very IEP of him. One interesting trick, if anybody has like a floor drain, which is not common in residential, but if you're at maybe your gym, this is a personal experience of mine. Walked into the gym restroom and it smelled like poop. Now that could be for a lot of different reasons. It is a bathroom, but I saw the drain on the floor in the center of the bathroom and I thought, and I took my water container and I just dumped all of the water. I was done with my workout. I dumped all of the water into that drain to kind of hydrate that drain. But this is an interesting trick. He said if you get a one ply piece of toilet paper and lay it over the top of the drain before you hydrate it, if it either is sucked to the drain or kind of floats a little bit, that means either way you've got a gas issue going on, something's not hydrated and it could be a problem. You just want it to lay there flat as if it's just sitting on the ground, like not being sucked in or floated. So I thought that was interesting. A fun little party trick to do next time you're in a commercial building restroom. And really, like sounds like an obvious tip, but don't seal drains. They are there for a reason. Like even if you never use it, you're like, "Oh, I never use that bathroom. I'm just gonna seal the drain like in a permanent or semi-permanent way." Don't do that because if anything breaks, then that water now has no place to go and you have a flood issue. Also, it's just like it's not you just use the drain. The drain is there for a reason. Use it. And I know it's annoying to have to refill your drain every now and then. He does have a product that maintains the moisture level inside drains. So if I can find it, I'll put a link in the description. He didn't promote it big time. He just kind of mentioned it offhand during his talk that he had a product that would help the drain stay hydrated. So you can do something like that to extend the life of the hydration. But yeah, I think that's all I got.
Next up was Dr. Kirsi Vaali, and she came all the way from the Netherlands, Finland.
Yeah.
Is that the Netherlands? Those are different places. I'm not good at geography, guys. Her talk was Revolution in the Analysis of Indoor Air Quality. And she is a research professor, and she was sharing about this new testing method they've developed in Finland. It's actually not a new testing method, it's a new testing collection method. So they are culturing the molds. In the CIRS space, we normally talk about MSQ PCR testing, which is the dust testing, which they then analyze for the DNA of the molds. This testing culturing is basically they take a sampling of the mold and then they culture it on agar plates. So you may have done this in science class at some point where your teacher had you like rub it on the doorknob and then you would watch the bacteria grow.
Delicious.
Ew. Yeah. Oh, okay. Weird choice. Anyway, they're they're culturing molds, and it's not a perfect testing method, same way no mold testing method is the perfect mold testing method. It does have limitations. For example, the bad molds will outgrow the good molds on the plates. You can also have multiple colonies on a plate, which can make it difficult to determine. It can be layers of colonies, so they kind of have to like peel back the layers, so you can misidentify or misidentify the actual molds on the plate. And her thing was they have this new way to collect the culture because normally with culturing you would have to leave the plate out for a certain period of time, typically days, in order to get enough spores to grow the mold colonies. But what they did in Finland was they have proved that water particles actually can carry mold particulates up into the air. And the way she explained this, and I think, do you want to take this part?
No, no, I
Okay.
really liked the way she explained it, but go for it.
Like if you're ever boiling potatoes, like if you fry potatoes in oil, you don't get oil on your vent hood until you add the potatoes into the oil, and then at that point the water vapor can carry the oil up to the hood. So that's how she explained why the water vapor is important in this process. So basically they take dry ice on metal plates to create an environment where they're collecting the water vapor from the air. So it reduces the culturing collection time to hours instead of days. That was the point of her talk, was sharing this new methodology with the CIRS community. And then one other thing I wanted to mention from her talk was she had this case study of a house that flooded in Finland. And when they pulled everything out of the house, it smelled mildewy, moldy, etc. And they left it out in sunshine for several days, and all of their stuff was out on the yard. And the family got mad that all their stuff was like just piled up in the yard. So they ended up getting a storage container and putting it in the storage container for the family. And you would think when they opened the storage container, it would just be like, woof, mildew and mold. But no, they think that it being out in the sunshine and exposed to the UV light was able to kill all of the mold. So that doesn't mean, for a CIRS patient, it doesn't matter if the mold is dead or alive. Our bodies can't identify it, can't remove it. It's the immune response that is attacking us, not the live mold. So it's still important to do the small particle cleaning for all of that stuff. But I thought that was super fascinating in terms of one, killing mold, but two, also getting rid of that smell. And maybe as a secondary step, doing the small particle cleaning. It'd be interesting to see if anyone is doing research on the effectiveness on UV light for that.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that. I mean, it was dramatic illustration because she literally had pictures of this whole, situation happening with the flood inside and carrying everything out and all of that. And she reiterated something we already know, biocides only affect good bacteria, and so don't use them. Again, we don't want to kill the mold necessarily. We want to remove it for the reason that JC just explained or said. But I really like that she was able to bring that up, and I want to say, did somebody ask in the Q&A later about, probiotics being a good thing? I feel like I know you wanted to, JC, but I feel like somebody did bring that up.
Yeah, so the reason you don't want to use biocides on mold is not because it's not effective on all types of mold, but because the bad mold will outgrow the good mold. When you wipe everything out, you're just creating an opportunity for more bad mold to grow, versus if you were to leave the good mold or to introduce something like a probiotic, it could outpace the bad mold.
Right.
So that's kind of the theory behind the probiotic situation and why you might not want to use biocides.
Yeah.
Probably don't. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't use parasites.
Don't do it.
Next up was Michael Schrantz, the man, the myth, the legend. He did Flex in the Flow, HVAC inspection and cleaning, and oh my gosh, he generated a bunch of AI images so he wouldn't get, flagged by Getty Images for using theirs, and they were hilarious. Like he tried to make a HVAC character like the Michelin tire man. He just had like flexi ducks for arms. It was disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a stuff of nightmares. It was a good time. Yeah, but I mean, as always, Schrantz always packs his presentations with facts and tips and lots of stuff. So I can read a few of my notes on this. First of all, he started out as an HVAC guy, so he has a, very thorough understanding of HVAC systems. So I'm really happy that he took over this topic for this year. The issue with air conditioning is that it removes humidity from the space that it is conditioning the air. But as a result, condensation can happen where you don't want it, usually on the coil, inside the return air plenum, downstream ductwork even. And he was asked later in the Q&A, like, what's your best case scenario for ductwork? And he said, like, if ductwork is either in the air conditioned space, kind of like a Chipotle restaurant, for example. I love me some Chipotle, so that was a good thing for me to remember. Or if ductwork is actually wrapped with insulation like a Christmas present. But that's not realistic. That's not how homes are built. That's like going above and beyond. But in a perfect world, that's what ductwork would look like. Again, just to prevent that, the cool air meeting the hot, unconditioned air and like then condensation forming on the walls of that ductwork. I really appreciated the fact that he had multiple examples of homeowners calling him saying, "What the heck, Mike? My computer chair keeps growing mold." And he said it's because there are nutrients on the computer chair.
I hate
And
this.
I know, I'm sorry. I was sorry before I even like got a third of the way through that little bit, but I had to keep going. I had to finish what I was going to say.
Clean your computer chairs, people.
I'm really glad. I just got a new one and it is mesh. So I feel like that's, some airflow is good. I feel like anyway. A note for anyone in the areas that use swamp coolers, they suck.
Don't.
But they actually don't suck. The problem is they pump humidity into the house. So, and when I say they suck, particularly the pads. So that's where you need to be worried about microbial growth occurring if you do use a swamp cooler. I know some people have to, that's how their house is, and I get it. So I'm not trying to make you feel bad about having a swamp cooler, but if you do have one, just make sure you are very on top of the maintenance, even more so than an HVAC system, I would think.
One thing that disturbed me was most air conditioning units are on some sort of raised platform so that it can suck in the air. And like he showed pictures of underneath those platforms, and even if they're not moldy, they tend to be super dusty.
Yeah.
I've never cleaned that.
Well, you kind of can't. Kind of. So for me and the homes I've lived in, that platform is a completely sealed drywall box. So there's no, I think some, if they're really well built or something, they probably have a little maintenance door or something you can open. I've never had that at any home I've lived
The
in.
the pictures he showed, they had like vents leading into the platform, so he was taking off the vents to then take photos of underneath the raised platform.
I see.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it just looked gross.
Yeah, it's not great.
Maybe clean your raised platforms, people.
Right. If you can. And I know when we got our HVAC system replaced, there was a little bit of a leak of condensation just dripping down into the return air ductwork that was below it, like doing what you just said, pulling the air in. And there was some gunk down there. And thankfully we were replacing the HVAC system. So we're like, can you replace that ductwork as well while you're at it? And they did. Made just a short little path to where it collects the return air from the house under the stairs. So it wasn't a big deal, thankfully, but it is something to look at. So that's what he kind of went into, when you are inspecting your HVAC system. Ideally, you would have a CIRS literate indoor environmental professional there to do it, but you would also have your HVAC technician, someone from the HVAC company there to open everything up for that IEP to get a good look. And that's also so they can professionally put it back together for them and make sure they put it back right. But in the process of taking everything apart, you can look down into where I just described, where you can look into that return air duct and make sure there's not condensation dripping down there, dust, debris, mold growing, all of that fun stuff. Basically, dust and dirt provide nutrients, and water provides the right environment, and then mold starts to grow. He even had pictures of stickers on the products themselves, the actual HVAC system, growing mold on the sticker because the sticker's paper and it's in there, and you add in some condensation, there you go. There's your mold. So you really have to be thorough when you are inspecting all of the things and cleaning each individual component, taking it physically apart if you're able to, and cleaning each part, especially if there is some kind of problem. There's an issue in your home, you want to be very thorough with the cleaning.
And then last but certainly not least was Bill Weber, analyzing dust for viable mold. So he was also talking about culturing, and his point was that the IEP's goal is to detect, identify, and estimate the extent of fungal growth in the home, and that all testing methods have limitations, but putting them all together gives you a clearer picture. And he said, especially if you're going into litigation, like any sort of legal issues with this, you want to have really comprehensive testing. So yeah, we recommend the Hertzme and ERMI as a way to just get a baseline on your home. But there's 148,000 currently described mold species. It's assumed there's between 2.2 and 3.8 million mold species, and the ERMI has 36. And so Bill said something about Michael Schrantz often saying, well, what if it was the 37th mold
Right.
that is affecting the patient's health? And so his point with culturing is that they can actually identify 25,000 different molds through culturing versus just the 36 on the ERMI.
Right. And And again, before anyone goes, "Oh crap, my ERMI is pointless now," or something like that, because I did kind of feel that way as I was listening to his talk. ERMI, you can I mean, you could do a 1 day turnaround with Envirobiomics. That's very fast. So if you are renting, you're looking for a safe place to live, you're in the home inspection process, and you're limited on time, it's still given, even with its drawbacks, it's still focusing on the most important species for CIRS patient purposes, and will hopefully catch some kind of issue. Like if if there's that 37th mold, chances are there's other molds too, and that ERMI is going to pick up something. So you're still going to get a good idea enough to move forward on either renting or moving into a house. Because the drawback with culturing is it can take up to 21 days. So it could be like a month before you hear back from your IEP or the lab, whoever's putting the report together, and then its interpretation before you even get an idea of what is going on, which is why it is perfect for a legal situation. You are probably still living at that house. You are fighting a legal battle that's going to take months, if not years anyway. Culturing is going to be a nice added layer of facts on your side to really identify, the problems. So, other benefits with culturing is that only viable mold is captured as opposed to mold that's like old or dead or just not growing. There are tons more species, obviously, as JC already described, and they are less affected by the bully molds or chemical inhibitors because they can actually do different little petri dishes or agars. Agars, that's how you pronounce it, right?
Agar.
Agar, auger. Okay. They were,
But petri dishes is good.
yeah,
They are petri dishes.
yeah. So they can do a bunch of different ones basically, and compare and contrast all the different things to make sure that if one dish gets screwed over by one particular species of mold, the other ones have a chance to show off the other kinds of mold, so everything gets detected. What's nice is if you are interested in doing culturing, you can use the same dust, the same collection method that you would for MSQ PCR testing. So just the way you collect dust for those, send that same Swiffer into that a particular lab that is able to do the culturing. I don't Envirobiomics is not that lab, just so you guys know. But you can send that same thing in and they can do both MSQ PCR test as well as the culturing from that same dust. And of course, if you're interested in nerding out over all of this fun stuff, because why wouldn't you? Bill Weber did recommend a book called Sampling and Analysis of Indoor Microorganisms. So if you want to check that out, you can, and I'll try to grab a link and throw it in the description as well.
I thought you were gonna say I'll try to read it and then get back to you guys.
Oh gosh. No, I'm not. I mean, I love this stuff, but I don't know if I love it that much. I'd rather hear Bill or Michael or, John Banta explain these things. I'll just sit and listen and take notes.
I love that press.
Yes.
Well, that was a lot of information about, the indoor environmental professional process and remediation and mold. Definitely worth checking out. I would say, especially the Derrick Denis one was super helpful, and then the Michael Schrantz one, super helpful. Like both of those are really practical if you're a homeowner
Yeah.
or even renting, just to be able to identify and spot those issues. Highly recommend if you have access to the CIRSx talks now to definitely catch those two, or if they become publicly available in, 9-ish months, whatever. Those are the two I would be like gold star, highlight.
Hmm.
Let's watch those.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, if you guys are really interested in any of these topics, let us know in the comments. There was always a chance we can invite the speaker on to do an interview or otherwise do a more deep dive on any of these topics and specifics. So, yeah, let us
Please,
know.
please, please request it because then we get to hang out with Michael or Bill or
Yeah.
Derrick. Do
We're like,
it.
guys, that our audience asked for you. I
They
mean,
voted.
we don't care about you guys, but our audience, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it'll be fun. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed our CIRSx recap. I think we'll go back to, I guess, more normally scheduled programming after this. But of course, if you're looking for more help and support and info and tips, join us over at the cirsgroup.com and hang out with us.
We'll see you there.